Good morning, grade 4 pupils. I'm Charmel Jerome Jean Codemus from San Miguel Heights Elementary School, your teacher for today. Once again, let's get started because I'm happy to share to you another interesting lesson in mathematics. So make sure you have your learning packets with you, your notebook and a pen for taking down notes. Use the comment section if you have questions about my discussion. We are now on quarter 4, week 7 of most essential learning competencies. Do you know how to draw inferences? Do you want to record outcomes in a simple experiment? Because for today's lesson, you must perform and master these learning competencies. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to draw inferences based on data presented in a double bar graph. You should also be record favorable outcomes in a simple experiment. Let us start our lesson in a review. Use the data presented in this double bar graph to answer the question. How many pupils were enrolled in section Argon? Your time starts now. The answer is 37 pupils. Number 2. Which section had the most number of pupils enrolled? The answer is section Carbon. Number 3. How many boys in all were enrolled in grade 4 classes? The answer is 74 boys. Number 4. Which section had the least number of girls enrolled? The answer is section Argon. Number 5. How many pupils in all were enrolled in grade 4 classes? The answer is 150 pupils. Are you familiar with this logo? What does this logo stands for? Yes, this is the Valenzuela City COVID-19 Vaccine Rollout Plan logo or the VCVAX. VCVAX is a Valenzuela City government program that aims to vaccinate 71% of the city's adult population against COVID-19. All Valenzuelanos aged 18 years old and older are invited to join and register for the pre-COVID-19 vaccine. This is the prioritization framework for COVID-19 vaccination based on World Health Organization or WHO Strategic Advisory Group of Experts or SAGE on immunization. This will help reduce mortality and to preserve the health system capacity of the country. As of June 20, 2021, this graph shows us how many doses of COVID-19 vaccine were administered by Valenzuela City per priority group. What can you say about a double bar graph? Can you draw inferences based on data presented in this double bar graph? Graphs are visual representation which can give information both directly and indirectly. In other words, sometimes you may have to draw inferences or make conclusion based on the data presented. These are the things that we should remember before drawing an inferences. Number one, we need to determine the topic or title of the graph. Look at the x and y axis to understand the relationship that is being illustrated. And finally, you need to analyze the data in the graph. These are some expressions that we can use in drawing inferences. You should start with, from the information given in a bar graph, I conclude that. From the information given in a bar graph, I infer that. From the information given in a bar graph, I assume that. Going back to this graph, we can draw inferences based on data presented in this double bar graph. So from the information given in the double bar graph, I infer that the group with the highest dose administered in A3, persons with comorbidities, it has a total of 70,830 for first and second dose of COVID-19 vaccine. Let's draw another inference based on the data presented in this double bar graph. From the graph, I conclude that Valenzuela City have administered a total of 136,095 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine as of June 20, 2021. So for your first activity, you need to draw your own inference based on the data presented in a double bar graph. You have 30 seconds to do this activity. Your time starts now. So, from the graph, or from the information given in this double bar graph, it can be inferred that fruit sold in day 1 is more than of day 2. Can you draw another inference using the data presented in this double bar graph? So from the graph, it can be concluded that oranges is the least number of fruit sold in 2 days. So let us try to draw another inference in another graph. So your time starts now. The graph tells that the basketball is the most favorite sport of the boys and volleyball is the most favorite of the girls. This is a 1 peso coin. If I will toss this coin, which do you think will come out? Head or tail? Tossing a coin is a simple probability experiment. To know the chance that either a head or a tail shows up, which is the two possible outcome of this experiment. The head and the tail have equal chances to show up. The result of either head or tail shows up is called a success. So for your second activity, we will try a simple probability experiment using a coin toss. So you need to get 1 peso coin, or it can be 5 peso coin or 10 peso coin as long as it has 2 faces or head or tail. Second, you need to toss the coin. Put a mark in the tally column. You need to do this experiment for 10 times. Add the tally marks and write the number in the frequency column. So this is the column. So there are 3 parts. The sides of the coin, which is head and tails, the tally, and the frequency. So let's do this activity. The first result is head. So we need to put a tally in the heads. So another head. So our third result is tails. So we will put a tally for tails. So next, we have head. So there are three times the head shows up. Next is tails. Again, it is heads. Heads. And for the third time, there is a tails. And another tails. So for last but not the least, we have heads. So we need to count the tally for heads and tails and put it in the frequency column. So the frequency for heads is 6 because heads shows up 6 times, and the frequency for tails is 4 because it shows in our coin toss for 4 times. So let us express the probability using this formula. The formula is probability equals the number of favorable outcome or successes, or what we call the frequency, divided by or over the number of trials. The trials or the number of times the coin toss. So if we need to find the probability of heads, we have 6 over 10. Or the probability of tails is 4 over 10. So probability of heads is 6 over 10 or 3 pips. The probability of tails is 4 over 10 or 2 pips. So let's have another activity. So this time you need to have a wheel color. In this experiment, I will use a color wheel that has 6 kinds of color: red, blue, yellow, green, pink, and orange. We need to spin this wheel. So we need also to put a mark in the tally column for the number where the pointer is when the spinner stops. Do this experiment for 20 times, add the tally marks, and write the number in the frequency column. So let's begin. For our first spin, we need to put a tally on orange. Next. Second is green. So we have for third, red. So we just put a line in the tally column for every time that color shows up or stops in the pointer. So for the fourth result is yellow. For our fifth result, that is red. Again, red. So next, another result for orange. So that for the third time, there is red. So for the first time, there is blue. Yellow. Another red. Green. And for the first time, there is pink. Blue. For the fifth time, red. Orange. Green. Again, orange. Red. Green. Orange. So that's all. 20 times. So we need to count the tally for each of the color and put it on the frequency column. So the frequency for red is 6. Frequency for blue is 2. Frequency for yellow, 2. Frequency for green is 4. Frequency for orange, 5. And pink is 1. So let's find the probability for each color. So again, the number of successes or the frequency over number of trials. So probability for red is 6 over 20. Probability for blue is 2 over 20 or 1/10. Probability for yellow is 2 over 20 or 1/10. Probability for green is 4 over 20 or 1/5. Yan. Probability for orange is 5 over 20 or 1/4. Probability for pink is 1 over 20. So we need to remember to draw inferences based on the data presented in a double bar graph. We should remember the following. Determine the topic or title of the graph. Look at the x and y axis to understand the relationship that is being illustrated. And finally, analyze the data in the graph. By doing simple probability experiment, we can determine the number of times an event may occur. We use the table to record the outcomes of the experiment. Now, this time, you can ask me some questions about my discussion. I will wait for this question. So there is some question. The first question, can we draw more than one inference in a bar graph? So the answer, yes, you can. Because drawing inferences is not limited to one. So there are so many data that you can use in one bar graph. For our second question, what are other simple probability experiment that we can try at home? So, other simple probability experiment, you can draw some cards from a deck. You can use dice or roll a dice, or even while watching your favorite movie or cartoons or TV show, you can count how many times the main character say one specific word or phrase or do this thing that he always do. So for your assignment, you need to answer the assessment on page 28 of your learning packet for Mathematics Grade 4, Mathematics Grade 4, fourth grading, and your teacher will check if your answers are correct. So once again, I'm Shermel Jerome Jean Codemus, your Mathematics FB live streaming teacher for the day, giving you this message. The best math you can learn is how to calculate the future cost of the current decisions. So thank you for listening and participating. See you on next school year.